The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Clarence's house as Camilla, Queen Consort of the United Kingdom, reviewed the final details of her upcoming diplomatic visit to the United States. Her private secretary, Margaret Henley, sat across from her mahogany desk with a thick folder containing schedules, security briefings, and ceremonial protocols that would guide every minute of the next 7 days. Your Majesty, the American ambassador has confirmed that President Biden is particularly looking forward to your visit to the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, Margaret said, adjusting her reading glasses. The press coverage is expected to be quite extensive, especially given your long-standing advocacy for literacy programs. Camilla nodded thoughtfully, her fingers tracing the edge of a handwritten letter from a young cancer patient who had specifically requested her visit. These moments reminded her why she had embraced royal duties with such determination after years of public scrutiny and personal challenges. The opportunity to use her position for meaningful causes had transformed her from a controversial figure into a respected member of the royal family. "Has the security detail been finalized?" she asked, knowing that any international travel required months of coordination between British and American protection services. "Yes, Your Majesty. Commander Richardson will lead the advance team, and they've been working closely with the Secret Service for the past 6 weeks. The routes have been secured, and all venues have been thoroughly vetted." The Queen Consort's American tour represented more than just diplomatic courtesy. It was designed to strengthen the special relationship between Britain and America at a time when global politics demanded closer cooperation. Her itinerary included meetings with military families, visits to historical sites commemorating British-American friendship, and several engagements focused on her passion projects involving domestic violence awareness and adult literacy. Camilla had spent considerable time preparing for conversations with American veterans' families, knowing that many had sacrificed greatly in conflicts where British and American forces fought side by side. Her own military connections, through her father Major Bruce Shand and her late first husband Andrew Parker Bowles, had given her deep appreciation for the bonds forged between allied nations through shared service. The diplomatic significance of her visit extended beyond ceremonial functions. Recent tensions in international trade, climate policy, and defense spending had created subtle strains in the traditionally strong Anglo-American alliance. Her role was to represent the continuity and personal warmth that had characterized royal visits for generations, reminding both nations of their shared values and common heritage. Margaret continued reviewing the schedule. The governor of Virginia has arranged a special reception at Colonial Williamsburg, highlighting the historical connections between Britain and America before independence. The educational value aligns perfectly with your interests in historical preservation. "Wonderful," Camilla replied, genuinely pleased. She had always been fascinated by the complex relationship between Britain and its former colonies, particularly how shared language and legal traditions had created lasting bonds despite political separation. The irony that she, once seen as an outsider to royal traditions, would now represent those very traditions in America was not lost on her. Her staff had worked meticulously to ensure that every aspect of the visit would reflect well on both the monarchy and Britain's international standing. The Queen Consort's public image had evolved dramatically over the past 2 decades, from a figure of controversy to a respected advocate for important causes. This American tour would be one of her most visible solo international engagements since becoming Queen Consort. The morning briefing continued with details about media arrangements. American television networks had requested extensive access, recognizing that royal visits generated significant public interest and viewing figures. The challenge would be balancing media opportunities with the substantive diplomatic and charitable work that formed the visit's real purpose. "The White House has suggested an informal tea with Dr. Biden, focusing on your shared interests in supporting military families," Margaret noted. "They believe this could generate positive coverage while addressing serious policy issues." Camilla appreciated this approach. Her years of royal duties had taught her that the most effective public engagements combined genuine personal interest with broader symbolic significance. Her advocacy work had always been most successful when it arose from authentic passion rather than mere royal obligation. The security briefings had revealed the enormous complexity of protecting a senior royal during an international visit. Beyond the obvious concerns about public events and transportation, there were considerations about secure communications, medical facilities, and contingency plans for various emergency scenarios. The cooperation between British and American security services represented one of the closest intelligence partnerships in the world. Commander Richardson had briefed her on the advance work, explaining how teams had spent weeks evaluating every location, identifying potential risks, and establishing secure perimeters. The level of detail was extraordinary, from analyzing sight lines at public events to ensuring that secure communication channels remained operational throughout her visit. "Your Majesty, there is one unusual element to discuss," Margaret said, her tone becoming slightly more serious. "Intelligence services have noted increased chatter about various protest groups planning demonstrations during your visit. Nothing specific or threatening, but they want you to be aware that some events may attract attention from groups opposed to the monarchy or British foreign policy." This news didn't surprise Camilla. Royal visits often attracted protests from various groups seeking to highlight different causes or express opposition to British policies. Her experience had taught her that such demonstrations were simply part of modern royal duties, requiring careful management rather than avoidance. "What types of groups are we expecting?" she asked practically. "Primarily Republican organizations, questioning the relevance of monarchy in modern democracy, some Irish-American groups focusing on historical grievances, and various activist organizations hoping to gain media attention for their causes. The American authorities are confident they can maintain appropriate security while respecting protest rights." The Queen Consort understood that these challenges came with her role. Public protests had become routine aspects of royal engagements, particularly in democratic societies where freedom of expression was strongly protected. The key was ensuring that legitimate demonstrations didn't overshadow the positive purposes of her visit or create security risks. Her personal preparation had included extensive reading about current American political and social issues. She wanted to engage meaningfully with people she met, rather than simply performing ceremonial functions. Her conversations with military families would be more valuable if she understood current debates about veteran care and military spending. Her visits to educational institutions would benefit from awareness of American discussions about literacy and childhood development. The diplomatic protocols for her visit had been negotiated carefully between the Foreign Office and the State Department. While she would be received with full honors appropriate to her status, the engagements were designed to emphasize practical cooperation rather than elaborate ceremony. This approach reflected both nations' preference for substantive diplomacy over purely symbolic gestures. Camilla's wardrobe choices had been planned with equal care. Her clothing needed to respect American sensibilities while maintaining the dignity expected of a senior royal. The colors, styles, and accessories for each event had been selected to complement the occasions while avoiding any inadvertent cultural insensitivities or political implications. The economic significance of royal visits often went unnoticed by the public. British trade delegations would accompany her tour, using the diplomatic access created by royal presence to advance commercial relationships. Cultural organizations would benefit from increased American interest in British arts, literature, and historical connections. Tourism between the two countries typically increased following successful royal visits. As the morning briefing concluded, Camilla felt the familiar mixture of anticipation and responsibility that preceded major royal tour. She had learned to appreciate these opportunities to represent Britain abroad while advancing causes she genuinely cared about. The American visit would allow her to highlight issues that transcended national boundaries while strengthening relationships that benefited both countries. Margaret gathered her papers efficiently. "Your Majesty, the final wardrobe fitting is scheduled for this afternoon, and tomorrow morning we'll have the final security briefing with Commander Richardson. The departure is confirmed for Monday morning at 9:30. "Thank you, Margaret. Please ensure that my personal thanks are conveyed to everyone who has worked on this preparation. The attention to detail is remarkable." After Margaret departed, Camilla remained at her desk, reviewing personal notes she had prepared for conversations with the various people she would meet. These moments of solitude before major royal tour had become precious to her. They allowed reflection on the responsibilities she carried and the opportunities she had to make meaningful contributions to important causes. The transformation of her own public role served as a reminder that perceptions could change through dedicated service and authentic commitment. Her American visit would demonstrate how personal passion for worthwhile causes could enhance diplomatic relationships and create positive change. The little girl who had once dreamed of making a difference in the world had perhaps found an unexpected but effective way to achieve that goal. The afternoon brought final preparations and last-minute adjustments to schedules. American weather forecasts suggested some possible rain in Philadelphia, requiring slight modifications to outdoor events. The flexibility required for successful royal tour meant maintaining detailed primary plans while being prepared to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. As evening approached, Camilla felt ready for what promised to be one of her most significant international engagements as Queen Consort. The careful preparation, dedicated staff work, and genuine personal interest in the visit's purposes had created ideal conditions for a successful diplomatic tour that would benefit both nations while advancing important humanitarian causes. Monday morning arrived with unexpected urgency at Clarence House. Camilla had awakened early, as was her custom before important travel, but the atmosphere in her private quarters felt different. Instead of the calm efficiency that typically characterized departure days, there was an undercurrent of tension that she couldn't quite identify. Her lady-in-waiting, Sarah Whitmore, entered the breakfast room with an expression that immediately caught the Queen Consort's attention. Sarah had served the royal household for over 15 years and was not easily rattled, but this morning she appeared distinctly unsettled. "Your Majesty, I apologize for the interruption, but Commander Richardson needs to speak with you urgently regarding this morning's departure schedule." Camilla set down her morning tea, noting the careful diplomatic language Sarah was using. In royal households, urgent requests from security officials were never routine matters. She had learned to recognize when staff were managing potentially serious situations while maintaining appropriate protocol. "Of course, please ask him to come in immediately." Commander Richardson appeared within moments, his bearing more formal than usual. He was an experienced security professional who had managed royal protection for nearly 2 decades, overseeing everything from routine domestic engagements to complex international tour. His request for an immediate audience suggested something beyond normal scheduling adjustments. "Your Majesty, I regret to inform you that we have received intelligence that requires us to review the departure timeline for your American tour. The situation is developing rapidly, and we need to make some immediate decisions." The carefully neutral language alerted Camilla that whatever was happening was being treated as a significant security matter. Her years of royal duties had taught her to remain calm during unexpected developments while seeking the information necessary to make appropriate decisions. "What type of intelligence are we discussing, Commander?" "Ma'am, overnight monitoring has detected communications suggesting coordinated activities targeting your visit. While we don't have specific details about timing or methods, the pattern of activity has triggered protocols requiring immediate evaluation of all travel plans." This information transformed what had seemed like a routine departure morning into something far more complex. Camilla understood that modern security threats could emerge quickly and required rapid response from protection services. The decision to pause major travel plans was never taken lightly by security professionals. "Are we talking about postponement or cancellation?" "At this moment, ma'am, we're implementing a precautionary hold on departure while intelligence services conduct accelerated assessment of the threat environment. The American authorities have been notified and are conducting parallel evaluations." The diplomatic implications of delaying or canceling a major royal tour were enormous. Months of preparation involving dozens of organizations, hundreds of people, and complex international coordination would be affected. The media attention alone would require careful management to avoid creating panic or speculation about the nature of any threats. Margaret Henley arrived with additional briefing materials, her efficiency masking what Camilla recognized as considerable stress. The coordination required to manage a potential tour cancellation involved the same complexity as organizing the original visit, compressed into a much shorter timeframe. "Your Majesty, the Foreign Office has been notified of the situation. They're coordinating with the American State Department to manage any necessary adjustments to diplomatic schedules." The priority is ensuring your safety while minimizing international complications. Camilla appreciated the professionalism with which her staff was managing an inherently chaotic situation. Royal tour involved so many moving parts that sudden changes created ripple effects across multiple governments, security services, media organizations, and charitable institutions. What about the organizations expecting my visit? The Children's Hospital, the veterans' families, the educational institutions. Ma'am, we're prepared to handle all necessary notifications through appropriate diplomatic channels. The American ambassador has been briefed on the situation and will help coordinate communications with affected organizations. The human aspect of tour cancellations always concerned Camilla most deeply. Behind the diplomatic protocols and security procedures were real people who had been looking forward to royal visits. Children in hospitals, families of veterans, students and teachers at schools, all would be disappointed by sudden changes to carefully planned events. Her personal phone rang with a distinctive tone that indicated a call from Buckingham Palace. These direct communications during developing situations typically came from the most senior levels of royal administration, suggesting that the threat assessment was being treated with considerable seriousness. Your Majesty, this is Sir Edward Young calling from the palace. I wanted to personally brief you on the current situation regarding your American tour. Sir Edward's involvement confirmed that the potential threat was being evaluated at the highest levels of royal security. As private secretary to the king, his direct communication indicated that decisions about the tour were now being made with full awareness of the broader implications for the monarchy and British diplomatic interests. The intelligence services have identified patterns of communication that suggest possible coordinated activities designed to disrupt your visit. While we don't have evidence of immediate physical threats, the nature of the communications has triggered security protocols that require us to carefully evaluate all travel plans. This explanation provided more context about why her security team was treating the situation so seriously. Modern threats against public figures often involved complex planning and coordination across multiple groups or individuals. Intelligence services had become highly sophisticated at detecting these patterns before they developed into actual attacks. Are we discussing domestic threats or international ones? The communications appear to involve both American and international elements, which is why both British and American intelligence services are conducting parallel evaluations. The complexity of the threat environment requires careful analysis before proceeding with any major public events. The international dimension of the potential threat added significant complexity to any security assessment. Coordination between British and American intelligence services was extensive, but evaluating threats that crossed national boundaries required additional time and resources. Camilla's phone displayed several missed calls from members of her family, suggesting that news of the situation was spreading within royal circles. Managing family concerns while dealing with security procedures added another layer of complexity to an already challenging morning. Sir Edward, what timeline are we looking at for a final decision about the tour? Your Majesty, we expect to have a preliminary assessment within the next few hours. However, the thoroughness required for evaluating international threats may require extending the evaluation period through the remainder of the day. This timeline meant that her scheduled departure was definitely being postponed, with the possibility of longer delays or complete cancellation depending on what intelligence analysis revealed. The carefully orchestrated departure schedule would need to be completely restructured to accommodate the security evaluation. Commander Richardson received a message on his secure communication device that appeared to contain updated information about the threat assessment. His expression remained professionally neutral, but Camilla noticed the subtle change in his posture that suggested the situation was continuing to develop. Your Majesty, I'm receiving updates from the intelligence evaluation. The pattern of communications that triggered our security protocols appears to be intensifying rather than diminishing. This development is causing our security advisors to recommend extending the evaluation period. The escalation of whatever threat had been detected meant that quick resolution of the situation was becoming less likely. Royal tour required absolute confidence in security arrangements, and any uncertainty about threat environments typically resulted in conservative decisions prioritizing safety over schedule adherence. Margaret returned with additional updates from various organizations involved in tour planning. The complexity of coordinating postponements or cancellations across multiple countries, time zones, and governmental systems was becoming apparent through the stream of messages and phone calls requiring immediate attention. Your Majesty, the American organizations expecting your visit have been notified of potential scheduling changes. They're being briefed through diplomatic channels to ensure consistent messaging about the nature of any delays. The professionalism with which postponements were being managed reflected the experience that royal households had developed in handling unexpected security situations. While tour cancellations were relatively rare, the procedures for managing them had been refined through years of experience with various types of threats and emergencies. Camilla's personal protection officer, Inspector Davies, appeared with what seemed to be updated security briefings. His presence suggested that even domestic security arrangements were being reviewed in light of whatever intelligence had triggered the tour postponement. Ma'am, we're implementing enhanced security protocols for all your activities while the threat assessment is ongoing. This includes additional security measures for routine engagements and modified procedures for any public appearances. The extension of security concerns beyond the American tour indicated that intelligence services were treating the potential threats as broader than simply disruptions to specific travel plans. Enhanced domestic security suggested that whatever had been detected might have implications for royal safety generally. As the morning progressed, it became clear that what had begun as a routine departure day had transformed into a complex security situation requiring careful management and extended evaluation. The American tour that had represented months of careful planning and diplomatic coordination was now suspended pending resolution of threats that remained largely mysterious to everyone except intelligence professionals. The irony that she, who had spent years building public trust and international respect, now found herself the target of threats sophisticated enough to trigger major security responses was not lost on Camilla. The role she had worked so hard to fulfill with dignity and purpose had inevitably made her a figure of interest to various groups with different motivations and intentions. By mid-morning, Clarence House had transformed into an operational command center, managing a rapidly evolving security crisis. The elegant private quarters where Camilla typically conducted her daily correspondence and charitable work now hosted urgent consultations between intelligence officers, diplomatic officials, and senior royal staff. The secure communication equipment that had been quietly installed months earlier for routine travel coordination was now handling encrypted conversations with agencies across multiple countries. The steady stream of officials entering and leaving the building created an atmosphere of controlled urgency that was unprecedented in Camilla's experience as Queen Consort. Assistant Commissioner Patricia Wells arrived from Scotland Yard carrying classified briefing materials that required immediate review. Her presence indicated that the threat assessment had escalated beyond routine travel security into territory requiring the highest levels of law enforcement attention. Your Majesty, I need to brief you on developments that have occurred since our initial threat assessment. The intelligence picture has become significantly more complex, and we need your input on several critical decisions. The request for Camilla's direct input suggested that whatever intelligence had been gathered involved decisions that went beyond pure security considerations into areas affecting her personal judgment about acceptable risks and diplomatic obligations. What specific developments are we discussing? Ma'am, Signals Intelligence has identified communications networks that appear to be coordinating activities across multiple American cities on your planned tour route. The sophistication of the coordination suggests substantial planning and resources behind whatever activities are being organized. This information revealed why security services were treating the situation with such seriousness. Coordinated activities across multiple locations indicated a level of organization that went far beyond spontaneous protests or isolated incidents. The resources required for such coordination suggested well-funded and carefully planned operations. Margaret appeared with secure phone communications from the American Embassy. The involvement of diplomatic channels in ongoing threat assessment indicated that the situation had international implications requiring careful coordination between governments. Your Majesty, Ambassador Johnson needs to speak with you directly about developments on the American side of the threat evaluation. The State Department has information that affects decisions about proceeding with your visit. The direct involvement of the American ambassador suggested that whatever intelligence had been gathered involved American security agencies and possibly American citizens or organizations. The diplomatic sensitivity of such situations required careful handling to avoid creating tensions between allied nations. Camilla accepted the secure phone call, aware that her words were being monitored and recorded by security services in both countries. The formal diplomatic language required for such communications felt strange in the familiar surroundings of her private quarters. Your Majesty, I regret to inform you that American intelligence services have confirmed the existence of organized activities targeting your planned visit. The scope and coordination of these activities exceed what can be managed through normal security enhancement procedures. This confirmation from American sources meant that the threat assessment was being taken seriously by intelligence services on both sides of the Atlantic. The determination that normal security procedures would be inadequate suggested that proceeding with the tour would require accepting unacceptable risks. Ambassador Johnson, are we discussing threats to physical safety or attempts to disrupt diplomatic activities? Ma'am, the intelligence suggests a combination of both elements. The organized nature of the communications indicates planning for activities designed to create both security concerns and diplomatic embarrassment for both our governments. The combination of physical and diplomatic threats created particularly complex challenges for security planning. While physical threats could be addressed through enhanced protective measures, diplomatic disruptions required different types of countermeasures that might not be compatible with the ceremonial nature of royal visits. Commander Richardson received another secure communication that appeared to contain updated intelligence assessments. His expression remained professionally controlled, but Camilla could detect signs of increased concern about whatever information was being received. Your Majesty, I'm receiving updates from intelligence coordination centers. The pattern of communications being monitored has expanded to include additional networks and participants. The scope of potential activities is broader than initially assessed. The expansion of the threat assessment suggested that whatever intelligence services had detected was continuing to develop rather than diminishing through exposure. This pattern typically indicated that intelligence agencies were uncovering larger and more complex operations than initially suspected. Sir Edward Young arrived from Buckingham Palace with what appeared to be briefing materials from the highest levels of government. His presence indicated that decisions about the American tour were now being made with input from cabinet-level officials and possibly the Prime Minister's office. Your Majesty, I bring updates from Downing Street regarding the intelligence assessment of threats to your American visit. The Prime Minister has been briefed on the situation and has authorized full resource allocation for threat evaluation and response planning. The involvement of Downing Street confirmed that the potential threats were being treated as matters of national security rather than routine royal protection issues. The authorization of full resource allocation indicated that cost considerations were being set aside in favor of comprehensive threat assessment. Sir Edward, what is the current recommendation from security services regarding proceeding with the tour? Ma'am, at this time, the consensus recommendation is for indefinite postponement of travel pending complete evaluation of the threat environment. The complexity and scope of potential threats exceed acceptable risk parameters for senior royal travel. This recommendation for indefinite postponement represented a significant escalation from the morning's initial precautionary delays. The determination that threats exceeded acceptable risk parameters indicated that intelligence services had uncovered information suggesting serious potential for violence or major diplomatic incidents. The personal impact of this recommendation began to settle over Camilla as she considered the implications for all the people and organizations expecting her visit. Beyond the diplomatic consequences were the human disappointments of children, veterans, educators, and community members who had been looking forward to royal recognition of their work and achievements. Her private secretary received urgent messages from American counterparts managing the complex logistics of tour postponement. The international coordination required to suspend royal visits involved dozens of organizations across multiple time zones, each with their own operational requirements and public obligations. Your Majesty, we're receiving requests for guidance on public communications about the tour postponement. The American organizations expecting your visit need consistent messaging to avoid speculation about the nature of security concerns. The challenge of managing public communications about security-related postponements involved balancing transparency with operational security. Too much information could compromise ongoing intelligence operations, while too little could generate speculation that might be more damaging than facts. Inspector Davies appeared with updated domestic security protocols that reflected the expanded threat assessment. The modification of routine security procedures suggested that intelligence services were treating the threats as having potential implications beyond the canceled American tour. Ma'am, we're implementing enhanced security measures for all your activities while threat evaluation continues. This includes modified procedures for public engagements and additional security personnel for routine activities. The expansion of security concerns to domestic activities indicated that whatever intelligence had been gathered suggested threats that went beyond disrupting specific international travel. Enhanced security for routine engagements implied that the potential threat environment was being treated as ongoing rather than limited to the planned American visit. Camilla's family members began calling to express concern about news reports suggesting security issues affecting royal travel. Managing family worries while dealing with operational security requirements added another layer of complexity to an already challenging situation. The media attention surrounding the tour postponement was beginning to generate its own complications as news organizations sought information about the reasons for sudden schedule changes. The Royal Press Office was coordinating with government communications teams to ensure consistent messaging that protected operational security while maintaining public confidence. Margaret returned with coordination updates from various charitable organizations that had been expecting royal visits. The disappointment in their messages was evident, but so was their understanding that security concerns had to take priority over ceremonial obligations. Your Majesty, the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia has sent a particularly gracious message, expressing their understanding of the security situation while hoping for future opportunities to host your visit. These personal messages from affected organizations reminded Camilla of the human impact of security-driven decisions. The children who had been preparing artwork and the families who had arranged their schedules around royal visits would need to understand why their expectations couldn't be fulfilled. As afternoon approached, the scope and complexity of the threat assessment continued to expand rather than resolve. What had begun as a precautionary delay had evolved into a major security operation involving intelligence services from multiple countries and affecting diplomatic relationships at the highest levels. The transformation of her planned American tour from a diplomatic triumph into a security crisis represented one of the most challenging situations Camilla had faced as Queen Consort. The irony that her efforts to build international goodwill had made her a target for sophisticated threats was not lost on her, but her focus remained on supporting the security professionals working to protect both her safety and broader diplomatic interests. The afternoon briefings would determine whether the postponement might become permanent cancellation, or whether modified security arrangements could eventually allow some form of American visit to proceed. For now, the immediate priority was supporting the complex intelligence evaluation while managing the diplomatic and personal consequences of suspended travel plans. The afternoon brought a critical development that transformed the entire nature of the security crisis surrounding Camilla's American tour. Senior officials from multiple intelligence agencies had gathered at Clarence House for an emergency briefing that would determine not just the fate of her travel plans, but potentially her immediate safety and security arrangements. Deputy Director Sarah Mitchell from MI5 arrived with classified materials that required the highest security clearances to review. Her presence indicated that the threat assessment had evolved beyond routine travel security into territory involving national security implications of the most serious nature. Your Majesty, I need to brief you on intelligence that has fundamentally changed our assessment of the threat environment. What we initially identified as organized disruption activities has revealed connections to more serious security concerns. The elevation of the threat assessment to national security levels explained why her American tour had been indefinitely postponed, and why domestic security arrangements were being comprehensively reviewed. Intelligence services now believed they were dealing with threats that exceeded anything previously encountered in royal protection. What specific intelligence has led to this escalation? Ma'am, Signals Intelligence has identified communications suggesting coordination between domestic and international networks with capabilities and intentions that go far beyond protest activities or diplomatic disruption. The sophistication of their planning and the resources they appear to have access to indicate serious potential for violence. This revelation explained the dramatic transformation of what had seemed like a routine departure morning into a complex security crisis involving the highest levels of government and intelligence services. The possibility of serious violence against senior royals represented one of the most grave threats that protection services could face. Commander Richardson received urgent communications from the Joint Intelligence Coordination Center that had been established to manage the crisis. The real-time intelligence updates were clearly providing information that continued to escalate rather than diminish the assessed threat levels. Your Majesty, I'm receiving reports that suggest the communications networks we've been monitoring include participants with access to sophisticated capabilities. The technical analysis indicates planning for activities that could pose significant threats to public safety beyond direct threats to royal security. The expansion of potential threats to include broader public safety concerns explained why resources from multiple agencies were being allocated to the crisis management. Threats that endangered public safety, in addition to royal security, required coordination between law enforcement, intelligence services, and emergency management agencies. Sir Edward Young returned with what appeared to be briefing materials from the Cabinet Office and possibly number 10, Downing Street. The involvement of the highest levels of government indicated that the threat assessment was now being treated as a matter affecting national security and international relations. Your Majesty, I bring instructions from the Prime Minister regarding immediate security arrangements and longer-term response planning. The government is treating this situation as requiring the full resources of the state for resolution. The Prime Minister's direct involvement confirmed that the threats had been assessed as potentially affecting broader national interests beyond royal protection. The authorization of full state resources indicated that normal budget and resource constraints were being suspended in favor of comprehensive threat response. Sir Edward, what specific instructions has the Prime Minister provided? Ma'am, you are directed to remain at secure locations with enhanced protection arrangements until the threat environment has been fully assessed and appropriate countermeasures implemented. All public engagements are suspended pending security clearance. This directive for enhanced protection and suspended public activities represented the most restrictive security arrangements Camilla had experienced since becoming Queen Consort. The suspension of all public engagements indicated that threats were considered immediate and ongoing rather than limited to specific events or locations. Assistant Commissioner Wells received priority communications from Scotland Yard that appeared to contain operational updates about law enforcement responses to the developing crisis. The coordination between intelligence services and law enforcement suggested that investigations and possibly arrests were being planned or implemented. Your Majesty, I can report that law enforcement operations are being coordinated in response to the intelligence assessment. Multiple agencies are working together to address the identified threats through appropriate legal and operational measures. The initiation of law enforcement operations suggested that intelligence services had gathered sufficient evidence to justify direct action against whatever individuals or groups had been identified as sources of the threats. Such operations typically occurred when passive monitoring evolved into evidence of imminent criminal activity. The secure communications equipment was handling constant traffic between Clarence House and various governmental and security facilities. The volume of encrypted communications indicated that crisis management was operating at maximum intensity across multiple agencies and potentially multiple countries. Margaret appeared with urgent diplomatic communications from the American embassy and possibly from Washington directly. The international coordination required for managing threats with potential American connections required careful diplomatic handling to avoid creating tensions between allied governments. Your Majesty, Ambassador Johnson reports that American intelligence services are conducting parallel operations in coordination with British agencies. The cooperation between our services is described as unprecedented in its scope and urgency. The unprecedented cooperation between British and American intelligence services indicated that the threats being addressed were considered of mutual concern to both nations. Such cooperation typically occurred only when threats were assessed as potentially affecting the security interests of both countries. Inspector Davies coordinated with additional protection officers who were implementing enhanced security measures throughout Clarence House and its surrounding areas. The visible increase in security personnel indicated that threats were considered immediate enough to require significant additional protection resources. Ma'am, we're establishing expanded secure perimeters and implementing enhanced screening procedures for all visitors and communications. These measures will remain in place until the threat environment has been definitively resolved. The establishment of expanded secure perimeters suggested that intelligence services were concerned about potential surveillance or direct approaches to royal residences. Enhanced screening procedures indicated that even routine royal household operations were being treated as potentially vulnerable to infiltration or attack. Camilla's personal staff were coordinating with security services to ensure that enhanced protection measures could be implemented without completely disrupting the essential functions of royal administration. The balance between security and operational requirements required careful coordination between protection services and household management. The afternoon intelligence briefings revealed additional details about the scope and sophistication of the threats that had been detected. The technical capabilities apparently available to threat networks exceeded what intelligence services typically encountered in domestic security investigations. Deputy Director Mitchell provided updated assessments based on ongoing intelligence analysis. Your Majesty, the technical evaluation of intercepted communications suggests access to resources and capabilities that indicate substantial funding and professional planning. This assessment has prompted coordination with international partners beyond routine intelligence sharing. The indication of substantial funding and professional planning behind the threats explained why normal security enhancement procedures had been deemed inadequate. Threats involving professional planning and significant resources required comprehensive countermeasures that exceeded routine royal protection capabilities. Communications from Buckingham Palace indicated that other members of the royal family were being briefed on the security situation and that enhanced protection measures were being implemented across royal residences. The extension of security concerns to other royals suggested that threats might not be limited to Camilla specifically. The international media attention surrounding the postponed American tour was generating its own security considerations as news organizations sought information about the reasons for sudden schedule changes. Managing media speculation while protecting operational security required careful coordination between royal press offices and government communications teams. As evening approached, the scope of the security crisis had expanded far beyond the original concerns about disrupting a diplomatic visit. The detection of sophisticated threats involving international coordination and substantial resources had triggered the largest royal security operation in recent memory, involving agencies and resources typically reserved for the most serious national security threats. The irony that Camilla's efforts to build international relationships and support important causes had made her a target for such sophisticated threats was profound. But her immediate focus remained on supporting the security professionals working to protect not just her safety, but potentially the safety of many others who might be affected by whatever activities had been detected. The evening briefings would determine whether ongoing intelligence and law enforcement operations were successfully disrupting the identified threats, or whether additional security measures would be required to ensure her safety and the safety of others potentially affected by the crisis.